He touched down there, and I felt a shiver I hadn't felt in years. It was like an electric current running up my legs and into my chest. At 68, I thought certain sensations had died along with my Charles. My name is Dorothy. I worked for 35 years as a secretary at Lincoln High School here in Phoenix, and I never imagined that at my age I'd be telling a story like this to all of you. You know that feeling when you think life has no more surprises left? That everything that could happen already has? That's how I felt for the past 9 years, since my husband passed away after 40 years together. We get used to the idea that after 60, we're just a grandmother, a mother, a widow, as if the rest of us, the real woman that exists beneath these labels, was buried along with our husbands. What I'm about to tell you started with pain, a terrible pain in my lower back that shot down my legs. Sciatica, the doctor said. Years and years of sitting at the school secretary's desk had taken their toll. But this pain, which seemed like a curse, turned out to be the greatest blessing I could have received. Because it brought Ethan to my house. At first, when my children said they had hired a physical therapist to treat me at home, I was embarrassed. "There's no need for all this," I said. "It's too expensive, and I can go to the clinic." But they insisted. "You can barely walk, Mom," my Robert said. I gave in, more to avoid arguing with them than because I thought it necessary. I never imagined he would be such a young man. When I opened the door that Tuesday, I saw a man who couldn't have been more than 30-something, tall, with olive skin, a friendly smile, and gentle eyes. "Mrs. Wilson?" "I'm Ethan, the physical therapist," he said, extending his hand. I felt awkward, smoothing the apron I hadn't even realized I was wearing. What began as medical treatment ended up healing me in ways no medicine ever could. Because it wasn't just my body that was in pain. It was my soul that had been forgotten. No one told me that at 68, I could still feel things I thought were only for the young. No one said that those places inside me, which I thought had dried up like an old flower, could bloom again. Honey, when that young man's hands touched my leg for the first time, it wasn't just the muscle that relaxed. It was as if something much deeper within me, something that had been dormant for almost a decade, suddenly awakened. "You'll feel a bit of pressure here," he said, when his fingers found the exact spot of pain at the back of my thigh. But what I felt was far beyond pressure. It was an awakening, a reminder that beneath the wrinkles and gray hair, there was still a woman. But wait, I'll tell you everything properly, from the beginning, because this story still makes my heart race. And trust me when I say that life always has a surprise in store for us. It's never too late to discover we're still alive, truly alive. Before I continue, I need to back up a little, honey. For you to understand how I ended up in that situation with Ethan, I should tell you what my life was like before he appeared. Phoenix has always been my city. I was born here, grew up here, got married here, and raised my 3 children in the same neighborhood, close to downtown. My house isn't large, but it has history in every corner. The wooden floor that creaks when you step on it, the thick walls that keep the coolness even in the scorching heat of our Arizona summers. Everything there holds a piece of my heart. I worked for 35 years as a secretary at Lincoln High School. You know it? That big one near Central Avenue. I spent more time in that office than in my own home. I saw generations of children grow up, children of former students, even grandchildren of former students in the later years. Everyone in the neighborhood knows me as Mrs. Wilson from the school. I think I've signed more report cards and detention slips than most people have signed checks in their lifetime. My Charles was a bus driver, a hard-working, serious man. Not one for many words or much affection, if you know what I mean. One of those old-fashioned men who thought that providing for the family and not hitting your wife was love enough. I'm not complaining, mind you. He was a good husband in his own way. I never lacked anything. He never humiliated me, never cheated on me, at least not that I knew of. We built a life together, had our children, lived like everyone else of our generation. In bed, well, in bed things were always, how can I put this, functional. You know, women of my generation weren't taught to expect much in that department. It was more of a wifely duty. Quick, in the dark, without much conversation. Sometimes I'd feel a warmth, the beginning of something, but before I could understand what it would be over. After a while, you get used to it and stop expecting more. The friends at school would say the same thing. Men are just like that. At least yours doesn't come home drunk. It's the price we pay to have a family. And I believed it. When Charles passed away from a heart attack at 72, I cried a lot, of course. 40 years together is a lifetime. But after the sharpest pain subsided, something strange happened. How can I explain this without sounding like a heartless old woman? A certain feeling of freedom. Suddenly, the house was quieter, but also more mine. I didn't have to make dinner at a specific time anymore, or worry about ironed shirts, or listen to the same comments about the newspaper every single day. My children. They're the ones who gave me trouble after I became a widow. Robert, the oldest, lives right here in Phoenix with Martha, my daughter-in-law. They're both church people, you know, one of those strict ones. Christine, the middle one, also lives here, but she's divorced with a teenage son. And my youngest, Mark, lives in Tucson with his family. Robert and Christine, God forgive me, but they seemed to age more than I did after their father died. Suddenly, the roles were reversed. They started wanting to control my money, my schedule, even what I ate. Mom, you can't go out alone. Mom, you have to take this medicine. Mom, you don't need new clothes. As if I'd become a child overnight. My retirement pension isn't much, but it's enough to get by. And I have a little secret my children don't know about. For years, I hid a bit of the money Charles gave me for groceries. It wasn't dishonesty, it was insurance. My mother always said, a smart woman always has money her husband doesn't know about. I kept it in a separate savings account, which became my little secret. I never imagined I'd use that money the way I eventually did. But life surprises us, doesn't it? In the past few years, my body started showing signs of fatigue. The leg pain gradually got worse. I started feeling a burning sensation that ran from my lower back down to my foot. Some days, I could barely get out of bed. The doctor at the community clinic said it was sciatica, aggravated by arthritis and years of sitting at the school office. He prescribed strong medications, the kind that make you feel dizzy, but they didn't solve the problem. It was Christine who insisted on physical therapy. Mom, medicine alone won't fix it. You need physical treatment. I resisted at first. In my mind, physical therapy was for rich people, not for a retired school secretary. But the pain became unbearable. Some nights I would cry quietly in my bedroom so no one would hear. And you know what's worse, honey? The loneliness. Oh, that hurts more than any sciatica. Spending the day alone, the night alone. The TV turned on just to make noise. Sometimes I'd catch myself talking to the plants or to Charles's picture on the shelf. See what's become of me, old man? Your wife, all stiff with pain? I think we can get used to the absence of a man in bed, but not to the absence of a hug, a hand to hold. I was never one to look at myself much in the mirror. But in those days of pain, I began to notice the woman staring back at me. Hair more gray than brown, tied in a plain bun. Wrinkles around the eyes and mouth. Body fuller, especially around the waist. I wondered if that person was really me, or just an empty shell of who I used to be. One night, I took a long bath in the tub, one of the few extravagances Charles allowed in the house renovation. The hot water relieved some of the pain. While I was there, alone with my thoughts, my hand glided over my body, almost unintentionally. It had been so long since I'd touched myself like that, with care, with attention. I felt a strange tingle, a dormant sensation beginning to awaken. But I quickly pushed those thoughts away. How silly, Dorothy. A woman your age. It was that same week that Robert showed up with the news. They had found a physical therapist who made house calls. The health insurance would cover part of the treatment. He's coming next week, Mom, Tuesday morning. Little did I know that Tuesday would change everything. Absolutely everything. On Monday night, the evening before my first physical therapy session, I did something I hadn't done in a very long time. I tidied the house as if I were expecting important company. I washed the living room curtains, polished the wooden floors, and even pulled out those bath towels that were saved for special occasions. You know the ones, those that you buy and never use because they're too nice for everyday use. Honey, how foolish. Saving nice things for when? For whom? Life passes by while we're waiting for the right moment that never comes. That day, I decided that the good towels would be used by me. I woke up at 5 in the morning on Tuesday. Pain, as always, was my first companion of the day. That stabbing sensation in my lower back that shoots down my leg, like someone pulling a wire through my nerve. I took my medication with a sip of water and stayed in bed a little longer, waiting for it to take effect. Through the bedroom window, still dark, I could see the waning moon. I thought about how strange aging is. The mind stays young, full of desires and dreams, while the body becomes an increasingly tight prison. I got up slowly, leaning on the cane that Robert had bought, despite my objections. I don't need that, I complained, but deep down I knew I did. Our pride is sometimes stronger than our common sense. I took a long shower, washed my hair with that herbal shampoo Christine gave me for my birthday, applied the moisturizer I saved for Sundays. Standing in front of the closet, I was unsure what to wear. I didn't want to seem like I'd dressed up too much. After all, it was just a physical therapist coming to treat my pain. But I also didn't want to look unkempt. I chose a navy blue skirt that came to my knees, a light cotton blouse, and a light cardigan over it. I brushed my hair, which is now more gray than brown, and pulled it into a low bun. I applied a light, almost imperceptible lipstick and a touch of perfume behind my ears. "How silly, Dorothy," I said to my reflection in the mirror. "He's just a medical professional, not even a real doctor." Breakfast was simple: whole wheat toast with cream cheese, a slice of papaya, and coffee with milk. But I set the table as in the days when Charles was alive: embroidered tablecloth, porcelain cup, cloth napkin. After so long eating in front of the television with a tray on my lap, it felt almost luxurious. At 8:45, the doorbell rang. My heart raced in a way it hadn't for years. It's just nerves, I thought. I never liked doctors anyway. I walked slowly to the door, adjusting my blouse, checking that my hair was in place. I took a deep breath and opened it. I don't know what I was expecting, honey. Perhaps an older gentleman with gray hair like Dr. Mitchell from the clinic. Or a skinny young man with glasses. Never, ever could I have imagined what I found on the other side of the door. He must have been about 32 at most. Tall, much taller than me, who was always petite, with broad shoulders and impeccable posture. Dark hair, short, neatly trimmed. Olive skin, like someone who exercises outdoors. He wore a blue polo shirt with the clinic's logo and black sweatpants. He carried a large bag and a clipboard. "Good morning, Mrs. Wilson. I'm Ethan, physical therapist from Healing Hands Clinic." His voice was deep, velvety, the kind that seems to envelop you. His eyes were a hazel that shined even in the dim light of the porch. And his smile, an open, genuine smile that revealed perfect teeth and formed small wrinkles at the corners of his eyes. For a moment, I was speechless. I felt the heat rising from my neck to my cheeks. "Oh my God, I'm blushing like a teenager," I thought, mortified. Good morning," I stammered, trying to regain my composure. "Yes, that's me, Dorothy Wilson. Please come in." He entered with firm but respectful steps. Nothing invasive or intimidating. He looked around with polite curiosity. "What a cozy home, Mrs. Wilson. Have you lived here long?" he asked as I closed the door. "Oh yes, for over 40 years, since I got married." I don't know why I mentioned marriage right away. Perhaps an automatic reflex, an invisible shield that women of my generation always carry. "I can see you pay attention to detail," he commented, noticing the picture frames on the shelf, the well-tended plants, the cushions matching the curtains. "That's good. Patients who pay attention to detail usually follow treatment instructions better." I led him to the living room, where I had prepared a clear space, moving the sofa and placing a clean sheet on the carpet, as he had instructed over the phone the day before. "Would you prefer me to call you by your first name or as Mrs.?" he asked, placing his bag on the floor and opening it to take out some equipment. "Whatever you prefer," I replied, still uncomfortable with the situation. "Then please call me Ethan. And may I call you Mrs. Wilson?" "Of course." He gestured for me to sit on the sofa while he pulled up a chair to sit across from me. He opened his clipboard and began asking questions about my health, my routine, my habits. His voice was calm, professional, unhurried. Gradually, I began to feel more at ease. "And when did the pain start, Mrs. Wilson?" "Oh, I've always had back problems. I worked as a school secretary, spent a lot of time sitting. But it got much worse after my husband passed away, 9 years ago." "I'm sorry for your loss," he said, and there was sincerity in his eyes. It wasn't that automatic phrase people say, "Thank you. It's been a while, but..." "Well, some pains never completely go away, do they?" Something in his gaze changed, as if he understood that I wasn't just talking about physical pain. "I understand," he replied simply. After the initial interview, he explained how the treatment would work. "We'll work with stretching, myofascial release, and some specific exercises to strengthen the lumbar region and pelvic stabilizing muscles. You'll feel some discomfort at first, but that's normal. I need you to tell me when the pain exceeds your tolerance level." "All right," I agreed, not knowing exactly what I was getting into. "I need you to lie on this mat," he said, spreading out a cushion type of mat he had brought. "Face up first." With difficulty and an involuntary groan of pain, I knelt and then lay down on the mat. The position was extremely uncomfortable for my back. "Is it hurting a lot?" he asked, noticing my expression. "A little," I lied. "Actually, it hurt quite a bit." "I'll put this pillow under your knees," he explained, adjusting a small roll beneath my legs. "That will relieve the pressure on your lower back." Indeed, the position became somewhat better. He knelt beside me, and at that moment I realized how vulnerable I was. Me, a 68-year-old woman, lying on the floor of my living room with a young and unfamiliar man about to touch me. I felt a knot in my stomach that wasn't just nervousness, but also a strange anticipation. "I'll start with an assessment of your mobility and tension points," he explained, rubbing his hands together to warm them. "I'll be touching your legs and back, okay? Let me know if it's uncomfortable." I nodded, unable to articulate words. His hands approached my legs, and at that moment, I closed my eyes. I wasn't prepared for what would come next. Ethan's hands touched my legs over my clothes first, in gentle but firm movements, assessing the tension in the muscles. Even through the fabric of my skirt, I could feel the warmth of his palms. There was something different about his touch. It wasn't the clinical and impersonal touch of the doctors I knew, nor the hurried and utilitarian touch that Charles had. It was an attentive touch, present, as if through his hands he was truly trying to understand what was happening inside my body. "Mrs. Wilson, I'll need better access to the muscles in your leg. Would you mind lifting your skirt a bit? Or would you prefer that I come back another day when you can wear something more appropriate for physical therapy?" My face burned with embarrassment. I hadn't thought about this when I chose the skirt. I think it's better another day," I started to say, but then I thought about the pain I felt, the difficulty getting out of bed every morning, the days lost waiting for relief. "No, it's fine. Just a moment." With some difficulty, I adjusted the skirt upward, exposing my legs above the knees. I hadn't shaved my legs in weeks. What for, after all? And blue-tinged varicose veins serpentined under my pale skin. My thighs, once firm in my younger days, now had that characteristic flabbiness of age. I felt a wave of embarrassment so strong that I almost asked to stop everything right there. "Thank you," he said with naturalness, as if he were looking at anything common and not at the aged legs of a 68-year-old woman. "I'll start palpating the thigh muscles to identify tension points. It might be a bit uncomfortable." His hands touched my skin directly, and honey, it was as if an electric shock ran through my body. It wasn't just the physical contact itself, which would already be disturbing after so many years without being touched by anyone other than doctors, but the way he touched, with respect, yes, but also with a kind of acknowledgement, as if, through that professional touch, he was saying, I see you. Not just your pain or your age, but you. He pressed a point on the inside of my thigh, and I couldn't hold back a moan. The pain was sharp, mixed with something I couldn't immediately identify. Trigger point, he explained. It's like a knot in the muscle that radiates pain. I'll apply moderate pressure to release it. Take a deep breath and try to relax. I closed my eyes and obeyed, trying to focus on my breathing while his fingers worked on that painful spot. The initial pain began to subside, transforming into a strange sensation, almost pleasurable. It was as if, by relieving that tension knot, something else was being released within me, something that had been trapped, contained, forgotten for a long time. Is it helping? He asked, without stopping the movement. Yes, I murmured, keeping my eyes closed. I didn't want him to see whatever was reflected in them. His hands continued, moving down to the knee, then to the calf. At each tension point he repeated the process. Pressure, release, relief. My entire body began to respond in ways that I didn't know were still possible. A kind of warmth spread through my belly, rising to my chest. My breathing, without my realizing it, became faster, more shallow. Now I'm going to ask you to turn over, please, Ethan instructed after finishing with the first leg. I'll help you. Carefully, he supported my arms and back as I turned on the mat. The movement made my skirt ride up even more, and I quickly tried to adjust it, conscious of my beige underwear, the most basic and plain one I had. I'm sorry, I mumbled, embarrassed. Don't worry, Mrs. Wilson. I'm used to it. Make yourself comfortable and let me know if you feel any pain. Lying face down, with my face turned to the side, I could no longer see what he was doing, only feel it. And perhaps that made everything even more intense. His hands started at the back of my knees, slowly moving up the back of my thighs. The pressure was firm, therapeutic, but my body no longer distinguished where therapy ended and something else began. When his fingers reached the area just below the buttocks, where the sciatica caused that shooting pain, I couldn't hold back another moan, louder this time, more, revealing. I immediately bit my lip, mortified. I'm sorry, I said again, feeling my face catch fire. No need to apologize for the pain, Mrs. Wilson, he responded kindly. It's important for me to know where it hurts the most. But it wasn't just pain. That was the problem. It was a confusing mixture of sensations that I had no words to describe. It was as if each cell in my body was awakening from a long sleep, hungry for contact, for presence, for life. His hands continued upward, reaching my back, working the tense muscles of my lower back that were the root of the problem. His thumbs pressed specific points on each side of my spine, and for the first time in months, I felt the pain truly subside, as if something was loosening, unwinding inside me. That's it. Breathe at that rhythm, he guided, noticing that my breathing had deepened. When I press, exhale completely. That helps the muscle relax. I followed his instructions, inhaling through my nose and exhaling through my mouth, feeling a growing sensation of lightness. It was as if tons of weight were being lifted from my back. Not just the physical weight of muscle tension, but an emotional weight I'd been carrying for years. Unexpected tears appeared at the corners of my eyes. Are you all right? He asked, noticing my emotion. Yes, I replied with a choked voice. It's been so long since I felt relief. There was a pause in his hands, a brief moment of hesitation, as if my words had touched something inside him too. Then, with even more care, he resumed the treatment. Sometimes, he said in a low voice, our body stores emotions that we can't express in other ways. Physical and emotional pain are more connected than we think. The session continued for another 20 minutes, with Ethan methodically working on each problematic area. To finish, he helped me sit on the mat and taught me some simple stretching exercises that I should do daily. "How do you feel now?" he asked, while putting away his equipment. I made a movement with my legs and back, testing. The pain was still there, but different, less intense, as if it had receded into the background. "Better," I answered honestly. "Much better." "Great, but this is just the beginning. We'll need several sessions for lasting results. I recommend 3 times a week initially. Do you think you can manage that?" "Yes," I replied too quickly, and then tried to correct myself. "I mean, if you think it's necessary." He smiled, that smile that lit up his whole face. "I do think so. Your sciatica is chronic. It will need consistent treatment." As he finished organizing his bag, I sat on the sofa, adjusting my clothes and trying to process what had happened. It wasn't just the physical relief that left me dazed, it was something more, something I didn't dare name even to myself. "So, I'll see you on Thursday, same time?" he confirmed, already at the door. "Yes, I'll be here." He extended his hand for a formal farewell, and when my fingers touched his, I felt that electric current again, that awakening. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I had the strange sensation that he had felt something too. Not the same as me, certainly, but something. "Until Thursday, Mrs. Wilson. Don't forget the exercises." When I closed the door after he left, I leaned my back against the wood and closed my eyes, breathing deeply. My entire body seemed to vibrate at a different frequency. What was happening to me? It was ridiculous, absurd, inappropriate. He was young enough to be my son, almost my grandson. He was a professional doing his job, and I was just another elderly patient with back pain. But even as I mentally reprimanded myself, part of me was already counting the hours until Thursday. The 2 days that passed until the next session were the longest of my life. I confess to you, honey, that I felt like a teenager again. That anxiety in the stomach, that need to check the clock every 5 minutes, that excessive concern with appearance. On Wednesday, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the hair salon. Maggie, who has been doing my hair since I moved to the neighborhood, almost fell over backward when I asked for a color. "Mrs. Wilson, you've never wanted to dye your hair. You always said gray was a sign of wisdom," she commented, surprised. "Well, I'm tired of being wise, Maggie," I replied, trying to sound casual. "I want to feel pretty for a while." I chose a medium brown, close to my natural color, nothing too drastic. But the result made me look 10 years younger. Maggie also convinced me to get my eyebrows done and a facial moisturizing treatment. "You look different today," she observed while finishing the styling. "There's a sparkle in your eyes I haven't seen in a long time." I quickly changed the subject. What would I say? That I was like this because of a physical therapist who was half my age? I couldn't even admit that out loud to myself. On the way home, I stopped at a department store. I hadn't been into a clothing store for so long that I felt lost among so many options. A young saleswoman, seeing my discomfort, came to help me. "Are you looking for something specific, ma'am?" "Clothes, for physical therapy," I answered, partially honest. "Something comfortable, but nice." I ended up leaving the store with 2 pairs of black leggings. "Super comfortable for exercises, ma'am. 3 knit tops in colors I never wore, a sea green, a soft lilac, and a pink. And, God forgive me for the extravagance, a new set of lingerie. Nothing scandalous, of course, just a matching bra and panties in a petrol blue shade with a small lace detail." The saleswoman assured me it was the best-selling item for mature women who still take care of themselves. When Christine called that night, as she did regularly to check if I was okay, she noticed something different in my voice. "Mom, did something happen? You sound strange." "Nonsense, dear. I'm just feeling a bit better from the pain. The physical therapy is helping quite a bit." "Oh, good. Robert told me he hired a highly recommended professional. What's he like?" I felt my heart race just at the indirect mention of Ethan. He's competent, I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. He seems to understand the subject well. Great. The most important thing is that he solves this sciatica problem. You can't keep depending on that cane. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. My mind was in turmoil, divided between anticipation for the next session and guilt for feeling this anticipation. It was madness, a delusion of a lonely old woman. He was just a professional doing his job. Any kindness, any special attention was just part of the treatment, nothing more. And yet I couldn't stop thinking about his hands, his eyes, that deep, gentle voice. What was happening to me? Had loneliness affected me that much? Was it just physical craving after 9 years without being touched by a man? Thursday finally arrived. I woke up even before the alarm went off at 4:30 in the morning. The back pain, curiously, seemed lighter. Perhaps the exercises he gave me were really working, or perhaps it was just the excitement altering my perception of pain. I took a long shower, shaved, something I hadn't done in, well, I'd rather not remember how long. Applied lotion all over my body. I put on one of the new black leggings and the sea green top, which according to the saleswoman complemented my skin tone. I tied my freshly colored hair in a low ponytail, applied a discreet lipstick and a touch of blush. Looking in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. It wasn't the young Dorothy of 30, of course, but it also wasn't the old Dorothy from yesterday. It was someone in between, someone who had life in her eyes again. I prepared coffee, tidied the living room, put fresh flowers in a vase, daisies I bought at the corner florist the day before. By 8:30, I was already restless, walking back and forth, checking if everything was in order. The doorbell rang at exactly 8:45, punctual as the first time. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart, and opened the door. Ethan smiled when he saw me, and then a look of surprise crossed his face. "Mrs. Wilson, you look different. Your hair—" "Oh, this!" I ran my hand through my hair, feigning disinterest. I needed a change, nothing special. "It looks very nice," he commented, and something in his tone made me believe he was sincere. "It suits you." I blushed like a girl, unable to respond. I just stepped aside to let him in, avoiding his gaze. "How did you feel after the first session?" he asked, placing his bag on the living room floor. "Much better," I replied. "I still have pain, but it seems different, less oppressive." "Excellent. And did you do the exercises I recommended?" "Every day, twice a day, as you instructed." He smiled again, and that smile lit up something inside me. "That's great, Mrs. Wilson. Many patients neglect that part, which is fundamental for the treatment. You're disciplined." "I was a school secretary for 35 years, I explained. Discipline became second nature." He laughed, a rich and pleasant sound. "I see you're wearing more appropriate clothing today. That will make the treatment much easier." "Yes, I thought about that. I didn't want to complicate your work." I prepared the mat in the center of the living room, as I had the previous time, and without needing guidance, I lay down on my back, feeling less difficulty than in the first session. "I can see you already have more mobility," he observed, kneeling beside me. "The exercises are really helping." The session started similar to the previous one, with Ethan assessing my mobility and tension points, but there was something different this time. Maybe it was the more suitable clothing, which allowed him to better access the muscles, or maybe it was the fact that now I knew what to expect, and secretly was looking forward to it. "Today we're going to work more deeply on the muscles around the sciatic nerve," he explained. "It might be a bit more intense than last time." His hands found spots on the side of my thigh that I didn't even know existed. The pain was sharp when he pressed, but it was followed by such deep, complete relief that it was almost ecstatic. I couldn't hold back small sighs when he released each point of tension. "That's it. Breathe through the pain," he encouraged. "When you exhale completely, the muscle surrenders, relaxes." At one point, He needed to work on a particularly sensitive spot on the inside of my thigh, very close to the groin. His hands moved with absolute professionalism, but my body didn't know that. My traitorous body responded to his touch as if he were a lover, not a therapist. "I'll need to apply stronger pressure here," he warned, positioning his thumbs on a specific point. "It can be quite uncomfortable. Let me know if it's too much." When he pressed, a wave of sensation swept through me. Pain, yes, but mixed with something else, something I hadn't felt in so long that I had almost forgotten. A liquid warmth spread through my belly, and a moan escaped my lips before I could contain it. Our eyes met for a fleeting instant. There was something in his eyes, surprise, embarrassment, that disappeared so quickly I thought I had imagined it. "I'm sorry," I murmured, mortified. "It hurt more than I expected." "It's all right," he replied, his voice professional. But something in it had changed, subtly. "Let's try a different approach." He adjusted the position of his hands, moving them slightly away from the sensitive area, and continued the treatment. But something had changed in the air between us. A subtle tension, an unspoken acknowledgement that what was happening wasn't just therapeutic. When he asked me to turn over on my stomach, I obeyed in silence, grateful to be able to hide my face and the confusion of emotions that was certainly stamped on it. In the weeks that followed, something began to change in me. It wasn't just the pain that diminished, though that happened too, gradually, session after session, but I myself who was transforming. It was as if each therapeutic touch from Ethan not only undid knots in my muscles, but also untied something trapped in my soul. Have you ever felt that, honey? When a part of you that has been dormant for so long begins to awaken. It's frightening and wonderful at the same time, like coming out of a dark house where you've lived for years and rediscovering that the sun still exists out there. After the third session, I stopped using the cane inside the house. After the fifth, I managed to go to the corner market by myself without feeling that terrible shooting pain in my leg. And in the seventh session, the seventh session, something happened that changed everything. It was a rainy Tuesday. The Phoenix sky was laden with those gray clouds that seemed to almost touch the tops of the palm trees. The rain fell in thick curtains, and the sound of the drops on the roof formed a kind of background music for our session. Ethan arrived a little late that day, soaked despite his umbrella. "I'm sorry for the delay, Mrs. Wilson," he said as I greeted him with a clean towel. "The traffic is terrible in this rain." "No problem," I replied, noticing how different my voice sounded when I spoke to him. Softer, more feminine. "I made fresh coffee. Would you like a cup to warm up before we start?" It was the first time I had offered anything other than water. Until then, we had strictly maintained the professional format of the sessions. But something about that rain, about that intimate atmosphere created by the dark sky and the yellowish light in the living room, encouraged me to cross this small barrier. He hesitated for a moment and then smiled. "A coffee would be perfect, thank you." We sat at the kitchen table, he with his sleeves rolled up showing strong tanned forearms, with small dark hairs that glistened against the wet skin. I served the coffee in porcelain cups, not the everyday ones, but those I kept for special visitors, and placed a plate with homemade cookies that I had baked the day before, thinking of him. "Did you make these cookies?" he asked, biting into one with evident pleasure. "Yes, my mother's recipe, cheese cornmeal cookies." "They're delicious," he complimented, taking another. "It's been a long time since I've eaten anything homemade like this. Since I left my mother's house, actually." That caught my attention. It was the first time he had mentioned something personal. "Do you live alone?" I asked, trying not to seem overly curious. "With a college roommate," he answered. "We share an apartment near the clinic. More practical, splitting the rent." "And your family?" "My mother lives in Flagstaff, with my younger sister. My father passed away when I was 16. "I'm sorry," I said sincerely, feeling an unexpected connection. We both knew the pain of loss. "It's been a while," he said, with a slight smile that didn't fully reach his eyes. "It was difficult, but we adapted. My mother is a very strong woman. She reminds me of you in a way. Those words caused a strange warmth in my chest. He saw strength in me, when I myself could only see fragility and decay? Me, I questioned, surprised. Strong? Of course, he answered, as if it were obvious. You raised 3 children, worked your whole life, and even with all this pain, you never failed to do the exercises I recommended. That requires strength, Mrs. Wilson. Perhaps it was the coffee, or the rain, or that unexpected compliment. But something made me bolder at that moment. Ethan, I think after so many sessions working on my legs, you could call me just Dorothy. Without the Mrs., it makes me feel even older than I already am. He looked surprised, but then smiled. That smile that lit up his entire face. All right, Dorothy. The way my name came out of his lips, without the formal prefix, sounded strangely intimate, like a verbal caress. We finished the coffee and began the session. The atmosphere was different that day, more relaxed, more personal. As he worked on the muscles in my back, I began to ask questions about his training, his professional plans. He answered enthusiastically, telling me about his specialization in treating elderly patients, about how he chose physical therapy after helping his grandfather recover from a stroke. Most of my colleagues prefer to work with athletes or children, he explained, as his hands worked a particularly resistant knot in my lower back. But I've always liked working with older adults. You have stories to tell, life experience. Each body carries its own story, you know. I can feel in the muscles the marks of the life the person has led. And what do my muscles tell you about me? I asked, my voice slightly muffled by the mat where I was lying face down. His hands paused for a moment, as if he were really considering the question. Your muscles tell of a woman who has carried a lot of weight, not just physical, but emotional. Someone who got used to holding everything in alone, not asking for help. The shoulders especially. His hands moved to this area, are always on guard, protecting. But I also see adaptability, strength, and recently something new emerging, a kind of awakening. I remained silent, stunned by the accuracy of the reading. How could he know so much about me just through my body? Sorry if I said too much, he said, interpreting my silence as discomfort. Sometimes I get carried away with these observations. No, it's all right, I replied, my voice huskier than I intended. It's just that you're right. About everything. The session continued, but something fundamental had changed. They were no longer just therapeutic hands working on an anonymous body. It was Ethan touching Dorothy. 2 people, 2 complete human beings, with histories, feelings, vulnerabilities. When he worked on a particularly sensitive spot near my waist, I didn't suppress the moan that escaped my lips. It wasn't just pain. It wasn't just relief. It was pleasure. A pleasure I hadn't felt in so long that I had almost forgotten what it was like. Is it hurting too much? He asked, his voice slightly altered. No, I answered honestly. It's not pain. There was a moment of tense silence, loaded with unspoken possibilities. His hands stopped for an instant, and then continued, perhaps with a little more care, perhaps with a little more awareness. At the end of the session, when I got up from the mat, I noticed an evident physical transformation. My movements were more fluid, the pain had receded significantly, but the internal transformation was even deeper. You're progressing very well, he commented, putting away his equipment. I'm really impressed with your recovery. That's because I have an excellent physical therapist, I replied, with a confidence I didn't know I still possessed. He smiled, a slight blush coloring his cheeks. Thank you, but the merit is yours. Your discipline with the exercises, your determination. How much longer do you think we'll need to continue the sessions? I asked, suddenly realizing that the idea of ending the treatment caused me unexpected anguish. Well, technically, another 4 or 5 sessions should be enough to resolve the sciatica problem, he answered. But it would be good to maintain a weekly maintenance session for some time to ensure the problem doesn't return. I think that's a great idea, I agreed quickly, relieved. When I accompanied him to the door, The rain was still falling outside, though with less intensity. There were puddles on the path to the gate. "Thank you for the coffee," he said, "and for the cookies. They were the highlight of my day." "Come by any day, even if it's not for a session," I said without thinking. "I can make a fresh batch." As soon as the words left my mouth, I wanted to swallow them back. It was too bold, inappropriate. But to my surprise, his face lit up. "I would really like that," he replied, and something in his eyes told me he really meant it. That night, after a long bath, I stopped in front of the bathroom mirror. I usually avoided looking at my naked body, preferring merciful ignorance to confronting the reality of age. But this time, I allowed myself to really look. The breasts that were once firm and now yielded to gravity, the belly with its silver stretch marks, memories of 3 pregnancies, the thighs with cellulite, the arms with that typical flabbiness of age. But for the first time in many years, I didn't just see decay. I saw a body that had lived, that had loved, suffered, nourished children, worked hard. A body that, despite all the marks of time, was still capable of feeling. Pain, yes, but also pleasure, warmth, desire. "Dorothy," I said to my reflection, testing how my own name sounded without the Mrs. in front of it. And I smiled at the woman in the mirror, a woman who, at 68, was finally beginning to rediscover herself. It was during the 10th session that everything definitely changed between Ethan and me. We were already in mid-November, and that humid heat that only those who live in the Southwest know was taking over the city. The days were long and hot, the nights sultry, the air heavy even with all the windows open. I was practically recovered from the sciatica. The pain had diminished to the point of being just an occasional discomfort, and I had completely abandoned the cane. I could walk around the neighborhood without difficulty, even do light shopping on my own, something unthinkable 2 months before. Technically, the intensive treatment could end, maintaining only bi-weekly maintenance sessions. But neither Ethan nor I mentioned this fact. It was as if we had made a silent agreement to prolong those meetings that had become the center of my week, and, I suspected, of his as well. That Tuesday, the heat was especially oppressive. I had prepared cold passion fruit juice and kept it in the refrigerator to offer after the session, as had become our little ritual. In the past few weeks, Ethan always reserved about 15 minutes after the treatment for us to have a drink together in the kitchen and talk about books, movies, news, anything except the strangely intimate situation that was growing between us. I was wearing a light cotton dress, light blue, that reached my knees, appropriate for the heat and for the exercises, but also carefully chosen to highlight what was still good about my body. I had applied a little perfume behind my ears and put on a discreet lipstick. My hair, now completely covered by the brown dye, was tied in a low bun that, seconds before he arrived, I loosened, letting it fall in waves over my shoulders. When Ethan arrived, I immediately noticed something was different. He usually came directly from the clinic, wearing the blue uniform with the company logo. But that day, he was in civilian clothes, light jeans and a simple but impeccable white cotton shirt. Hair damp as if he had just gotten out of the shower, the subtle cologne I could smell when he approached for the usual greeting. "Sorry about the different clothes," he said, noticing my look. "I had to stop by home first. There was a small accident at the clinic. A patient spilled coffee on my uniform." "No need to apologize," I replied. "You look nice like this." He smiled, and I noticed he was slightly nervous, something unusual for someone generally so confident and professional. We began the session, as always, with him guiding the initial stretches. But there was an electricity in the air that hadn't been present before. Each touch seemed to last a little longer. Each look carried a little more meaning. The conversation, normally fluid, was interspersed with silences that said more than words. "Let's try something different today," he proposed after the preliminary exercises. "A deeper myofascial release technique. It helps loosen the last restrictions in the connective tissues. It might be a bit more intense." "I trust you," I replied, and realized it was true. I trusted him not only as a professional, but as a person. He asked me to lie on my back on the mat, as usual. But this time, instead of working on my legs or lower back, his hands moved up to my shoulders, neck, base of the head. It was the first time he touched this region, and the proximity was intoxicating. His face was inches from mine as his fingers worked the tense muscles of my neck. "Take a deep breath," he instructed, and his voice was different, lower, more intimate. I obeyed, feeling a warmth spreading through my body that had nothing to do with the November climate. When his fingers found a particularly sensitive spot at the base of my skull, I couldn't contain a sigh that sounded much more like pleasure than relief. Our eyes met, and this time, neither of us looked away. There was a silent question in his eyes, a question that demanded an answer. "Ethan," I whispered, unable to say more. "This is very wrong," he said, but his hands didn't stop, continuing the massage on my neck, shoulders, moving down to my chest, always respecting the limits of clothing. "I shouldn't." "I know," I replied, feeling my heart beat so hard I was sure he could hear it. "But it hasn't been just physical therapy for a long time, has it?" He closed his eyes for a moment, as if fighting an internal battle. When he opened them again, I saw the decision made. "No," he finally admitted. "It's not just physical therapy." There was a moment of suspension, as if time had stopped, and then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned in and his lips touched mine. It was a light kiss, almost chaste, a simple brushing of lips. He pulled away almost immediately, as if waiting for my reaction, ready to retreat at the slightest sign of rejection. But rejection was the last thing on my mind. For a moment I was paralyzed by surprise, not by the action itself, which somehow I knew would come, but by the wave of sensations that simple touch triggered. It was as if every nerve ending in my body had been activated simultaneously. My hand moved of its own accord, touching his face. "Don't stop," I whispered. This time the kiss was different, deeper, more urgent. His hands held my face with a gentleness that contrasted with the intensity of his lips. I responded with a fervor I didn't know I still possessed, my fingers tangling in the short hair at the nape of his neck. When we separated, we were both breathless. His eyes searched mine, concerned. "I didn't plan this," he said. "You need to know that. I've never done this with a patient before. I would never betray professional trust like that. But with you, it's different. It's been different from the beginning." "For me too," I confessed. "I thought I was imagining things, that it was ridiculous for a woman my age to feel what I'm feeling." "Your age doesn't matter to me, Dorothy." "It never did." "But it should," I replied, reality briefly intruding into the bubble we had created. "I'm old enough to be your grandmother. What would people think? What would my children say?" He held my hands in his gaze intense. "I'm 32 years old, Dorothy. I'm not a boy. I know exactly what I'm feeling and what I want. The question is, do you?" That question hit me like lightning. What did I want? I had avoided asking myself that question in the past few weeks, allowing myself only to live in the moment, to enjoy those hours together without thinking about the implications. But now, with the taste of him still on my lips, I could no longer run away. "Yes," I finally answered. "I know." He smiled, and in that smile I saw something I hadn't expected. Not just desire or attraction, but genuine tenderness. "I've been thinking about this for weeks," he confessed, "fighting against what I feel because I thought it was unethical, inappropriate. Technically it still is. I shouldn't get involved with a patient. But I can't keep pretending that's all you are to me." "And what am I?" I asked, part of me still needing verbal confirmation to believe what was happening. "Someone who came into my life and turned everything upside down," he replied. "Someone I can't stop thinking about when I'm not here. Someone I want to get to know better, far beyond these sessions." His fingers touched my face with reverence, as if I were something precious, fragile. But I didn't feel fragile at that moment. I felt strong, vibrant, alive in a way I hadn't experienced for decades. We can take it slow, he continued. There's no rush. We need to define what we want, how we'll do this. Officially, I'll have to refer you to another physical therapist. I can't be your therapist anymore after this, but I can be something else. Something else, I repeated, feeling the weight and promise of those words. We stayed like that for some time, sitting on the mat in my living room, hands intertwined, exchanging light kisses and whispered words. There was nothing more than that on that day. We both instinctively knew that we needed time to process what was happening, to make sure it wasn't just a moment of weakness or confusion. When he finally got up to leave, long after the normal ending time of the session, I held his hand one last time. Are you sure? I asked. I don't want you to regret this. He knelt in front of me, our eyes at the same level. The only thing I would regret would be not saying what I feel, not doing what I did today. I am absolutely sure, Dorothy. That night, lying in bed, my body vibrated with a new, unknown energy. It wasn't just physical desire, though that was also present, intense as never before. It was a sense of possibility, of doors opening when I thought all were already closed. At 68, I was about to experience something I had never experienced before. And as frightening as it was, I couldn't deny the simple truth that pulsed in my heart. I had never felt so alive. The truth, honey, is that happiness has a way of not going unnoticed. As much as we tried to be discreet in the weeks that followed, there was something different about me that drew attention. A sparkle in the eyes, a lightness in the step, a new energy that radiated from within. It was as if the clock had turned back a few decades, not in my body, which still had its wrinkles and limitations, but in my soul. Ethan, keeping his promise, officially referred me to another physical therapist at the clinic, a nice middle-aged woman named Vera, to continue the maintenance sessions. For all intents and purposes, my treatment with him had successfully ended. This allowed us to meet without violating his professional ethics. We started slowly, as we had agreed. A coffee at the mall, away from the curious eyes of the neighborhood. A movie in the middle of the afternoon, when there were few people. Small walks in the city park, where we walked side by side, sometimes holding hands, sometimes just close enough to feel each other's warmth. Each meeting was a discovery of common tastes, of intriguing differences, of shared stories. There was no rush for the physical. Although desire was always present, like a constant electric current between us, there was a tacit agreement that we needed to build something solid before taking that step. There were kisses, of course, increasingly intense, more intimate. There were touches, caresses, moments when we needed to pull away to catch our breath and sanity. But we both knew that, when it happened, it wouldn't be just sex. It would be the consummation of something much deeper. It was Christine who first noticed the change in me. She had come to visit on a Wednesday, bringing my grandson to spend the afternoon with me while she took care of some errands. I was in the kitchen, humming softly while preparing a cake, wearing a new dress I had bought especially to meet Ethan the next day. "Mom, what's going on with you?" she asked, observing me with curiosity. "You're different." "Different how, dear?" I replied, feigning innocence. "I can't quite explain. More cheerful? Younger somehow. The dyed hair, new clothes." She studied me as if I were a puzzle. "And you're singing. I haven't heard you sing in years." I shrugged, trying to appear casual. "The pain has improved a lot with the physical therapy. It makes all the difference not feeling that constant agony." She seemed to accept the explanation, but I noticed she continued watching me with an intrigued look throughout the visit. It was in the first week of December that everything came to light. We had arranged, Ethan and I, to go together to a small craft fair downtown. It was a quiet, common program, the kind of thing that wouldn't attract attention, a man accompanying his mother or aunt on an innocent outing. What we didn't expect was to run into Robert and Martha coming out of the church that was across from the square where the fair was happening. I saw my son first, from across the street. Instinctively, I took a small step away from Ethan, with whom I was holding hands. But it was too late. Robert had already seen us, and the expression of shock on his face was unmistakable. He and Martha crossed the street toward us with determined steps. "Mom?" Robert's voice had that tone of incredulity mixed with disapproval that I knew well. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Robert, Martha," I greeted, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're just visiting the fair." "We?" he repeated, looking at Ethan with barely disguised hostility. "And who is he?" For an instant, I considered lying, saying he was just a friend, an acquaintance. But something inside me rebelled against that idea. I was 68 years old, for God's sake. I wasn't a teenager who needed to hide or justify myself. "This is Ethan," I answered, straightening my shoulders. "You already know him, in a way. He was my physical therapist." "Was?" questioned Robert, his expression hardening. "And now what is he?" I felt Ethan tense beside me, but his posture remained calm, respectful. "Now," I replied, taking Ethan's hand again in a deliberate gesture, "he is someone special to me." Robert's eyes widened, and Martha let out a small sound of surprise. For a moment, no one said anything, the silence heavy between us like a physical presence. "You can't be serious," Robert finally said, his voice low but laden with emotion. "He's young enough to be your son. Less than that, your grandson." "Robert, this isn't the place for this conversation." I tried to calm him, noticing that some people were already looking in our direction. "We can talk at home, calmly." "There's nothing to talk about," he exclaimed, his voice rising. "This is absurd. An opportunist who's taking advantage of a vulnerable, widowed lady." Ethan, who until then had remained in respectful silence, took a step forward. "With all due respect, sir," he said, his voice firm but polite, "it's nothing like that. Your feelings are understandable, but—" "My feelings?" interrupted Robert, his face red with anger. "You have no idea about my feelings. You're taking advantage of my mother, probably interested in her pension money, or the house." "Robert, enough!" My voice came out stronger than I intended, surprising everyone, including myself. "I won't tolerate you speaking like that. Ethan didn't take advantage of anything. If you want to know, I was the one who made the first move." It wasn't exactly true, but I felt the need to protect him, to take some responsibility for the situation. Martha, who until then had been in shocked silence, finally found her voice, and it wasn't to support her husband. "Robert, people are watching," she said, pulling him by the arm. "Let's go." "Not without my mother," he insisted. "Mom, you're coming with us." Now, I felt a wave of indignation rise through my body. Who did he think he was to give me orders? "No, Robert, I'm not. I'm an adult woman, perfectly capable of making my own decisions." "Decisions?" he almost shouted. "You're being manipulated. Don't you see that? He's playing with your neediness, with your loneliness." Those words hurt, not because they were true, but because they revealed how much my own son underestimated me, infantilized me. "You don't know me as well as you think, son," I replied, maintaining my calm despite the internal storm. "I'm not a senile old woman incapable of discernment. I know exactly what I'm doing and with whom I'm doing it." "You're not thinking straight," he insisted. "What will people say? What will the grandkids think?" "It's shameful, Mom." "Shameful," I repeated, feeling the anger grow. "What's shameful, Robert, is you thinking your mother doesn't deserve to be happy after 9 years alone. What's shameful is you caring more about what others will think than about my well-being." Martha, surprising everyone again, placed her hand on her husband's arm. "She's right, Robert. It's not our place to judge." Robert looked at his wife as if she had betrayed him. Then he turned to me with an expression that mixed anger, confusion, and hurt. "This isn't going to stand," he said, almost threateningly. "I'm going to call Christine and Mark. We'll talk as a family. You're clearly confused, maybe even, I don't know, maybe we need a medical evaluation." That was the last straw. "You're not going to do any such thing," I replied, feeling a strength I didn't know I still possessed. "If you want to talk, my door is open. but if you come with accusations or threats, you won't be welcome." Without waiting for a response, I took Ethan's hand and walked away, leaving my son and daughter-in-law standing in the middle of the square, dumbfounded. Only when we turned the corner, out of sight, did I realize I was shaking. Ethan guided me to a nearby bench and we sat side by side. "Are you all right?" he asked, concerned. "No," I admitted honestly. "But I will be." He put his arm around my shoulders, and there, in broad daylight, I let him embrace me, comfort me. I no longer cared who might see, what they might think. That confrontation with Robert had awakened something primordial in me, an instinct of self-preservation, of defense of my own happiness that I didn't even know still existed. "I'm sorry," said Ethan. "I didn't want to cause problems between you and your family." "You didn't cause anything," I replied, wiping away a stubborn tear. "They would have to know sooner or later. Maybe it's better this way, out in the open." That night, as Robert had promised, my phone didn't stop ringing. Christine, Mark, even my older sister who lived in Denver. The news had spread like wildfire through dry grass. Some called to question, others to advise, some simply to express shock or disapproval. I answered everyone with the same quiet firmness I had discovered in myself that afternoon. No, I wasn't senile. No, I wasn't being deceived. Yes, I was perfectly aware of the age difference. No, I didn't care about others' judgment. And as the phone rang incessantly, a certainty grew within me. This was my life, and for the first time in many decades, I was living it on my own terms. 8 months have passed since that confrontation in the square. 8 months of changes, of challenges, of discoveries, and of a happiness I never imagined would be possible at this stage of life. We're now in July, and the dry Phoenix summer paints the sky an almost painful blue in its intensity. The mornings are warm, the afternoons hot, perfect for the walks we so enjoy taking in Encanto Park, hand in hand, not caring about curious or occasionally disapproving glances. My life has transformed in ways I could never have predicted. Some of these changes were difficult, painful even, like Robert's temporary estrangement, who went almost 3 months without speaking to me. Others were unexpectedly positive, like Christine's surprising support, who after the initial shock became an ally. "Mom, I've never seen you so well," she said during a lunch, about a month after the incident in the square. "You look 10 years younger." I confess it's still strange to me, but if you're happy, who am I to judge? Mark, my youngest, always the most easygoing of the three, accepted the situation with a serenity that moved me. "Life is too short to waste chances to be happy, Mom," he said on the phone, since he lives far away. "If this guy makes you feel good, then he has my blessing." The grandchildren reacted with the innocence and adaptability typical of children. For them, Ethan quickly became just Grandma's boyfriend, an initial curiosity that soon transformed into normality, especially because he has a special way with children, always willing to play ball with the boys or help Sophia with her math homework. As for Robert, well, the ice began to melt slowly. First came short WhatsApp messages, then brief calls, and finally, a tense but civilized visit. He still doesn't fully approve. I can tell by the way he avoids looking directly at Ethan or how he changes the subject when I mention something we did together. But at least we've recovered the ability to be in the same room without open conflict. It's a start. Martha, ironically, became an unexpected mediator. Despite her conservative religiosity, she demonstrated a compassion and understanding that surprised me. "Robert is stubborn," she confided to me once when she came to visit alone. "But he'll accept it with time. Deep down, he's just worried about you." As for my life with Ethan, it developed at its own pace, organic. We don't live together. We both agreed that would be too big a step for now. He maintains his shared apartment with his roommate, and I continue in my same house. But we spend 3 or 4 nights a week together, alternating between the two places. In the beginning, there was a certain hesitation on my part regarding physical intimacy. Years of conservative upbringing, decades without being touched in that way, and the natural insecurities about my aging body created barriers that I needed to overcome gradually. Ethan was patient, incredibly patient, each step taken respecting my time, my fears, my initial shame. And when it finally happened, about a month after we started seeing each other, it was a revelation. I won't go into intimate details, honey. There are things a woman keeps to herself. But I can say that I discovered at 68 sensations I had never experienced before. Not just due to Ethan's skill or youth, but because of the genuine connection between us, the attention he dedicated to every detail, every response of my body. "You're beautiful," he would say, with a sincerity I couldn't doubt, as his eyes roamed my mature curves, my life marks. "Each line on your body tells a story I want to know." It was with him that I had, for the first time in my life, a complete orgasm. Something that, in 4 decades of marriage to Charles, had never happened. Not for lack of love or dedication from my late husband, but due to a combination of mutual ignorance, unquestioned taboos, and the characteristic rush of conjugal relations of our generation. With Ethan, I discovered that my body, despite its age, despite its limitations, was still capable of feeling intense pleasure, of responding to the right touch, of vibrating and expanding in sensations I didn't know were possible. I didn't know it could be like this, I confessed after the first time, tears of emotion silently running down my face. He just smiled, that smile that lit up the whole environment and kissed each tear. "We have plenty of time for you to discover everything it can be." Our routine established itself with surprising naturalness. On the nights he spends at my house, he arrives after work, usually bringing something for dinner. He's an excellent cook, something he learned during his college years. We cook together, talk about the day, watch some program or movie on television. Then we go to the bedroom, where sometimes we make love, other times we just sleep embraced, and both options are equally precious. In the mornings, he gets up early to run before going to work, while I prepare breakfast. There's something deeply satisfying about this simple domesticity, this sharing of spaces and moments. When I go to his apartment, the dynamic is different. The place is typically masculine, with practical furniture and minimalist decoration. His roommate, Lucas, a quiet young man who is also a physical therapist, treated me with respect from the beginning, without asking questions or showing judgment about the age difference. "Ethan has been happier since he met you," he commented once, while we waited for Ethan to finish getting ready for us to go out. "I've never seen him like this with anyone before." At first, I felt out of place in that young environment, with music, movies, and references that I often didn't fully understand. But gradually I found my place, bringing elements of my own experience to that world so different from mine. There is a constant exchange between us. Ethan introduces me to new technologies, apps, bands, contemporary films. I share stories from other times, old recipes, values, and perspectives that only life experience can bring. It's a relationship of mutual learning, of shared discoveries. Our age difference manifests itself in unexpected ways sometimes, like when I mentioned having danced to Frank Sinatra in my youth, and he said his grandfather was also a fan. Or when I talked about typing on typewriters, and he looked at me with a mixture of fascination and incredulity. But these differences, instead of pushing us apart, became bridges for deep conversations, for new understandings. Of course, not everything is rosy. We face curious, sometimes hostile looks when we go out together. I've heard malicious comments in supermarket lines or in restaurants. "She must be rich. He's with her for the money. She could be his mother." At first, each word hurt like an open wound. Today, I've learned to let it go, to focus on what really matters. Ethan deals with it better than I do. "People fear what they don't understand," he says, "and a love that defies conventions scares them because it questions the safe choices they've made in their own lives." There are also practical issues we need to face: future plans, life expectations, health. We cannot ignore the fact that I am 36 years older, that statistically I will have less lifetime ahead. We have talked about this with an honesty that, though sometimes painful, strengthens our connection. I don't know how much time we'll have, I told him one night, lying in the darkness of my bedroom. But I know I want to live each day of that time fully, without regrets. He hugged me tighter, his heart beating against my back. Nobody knows how much time they have, Dorothy. Young people die every day in accidents, diseases. What matters isn't the amount of time, but what we do with it. That philosophy has guided our relationship. We live the now intensely, building memories, sharing experiences, exploring together this unknown territory of a love that transcends conventional barriers of age and social expectation. And today, at 69 years recently completed, Ethan organized a beautiful surprise party last month. I feel more alive, more complete, more authentic than at any other moment in my existence. As if all the previous years had been just a rehearsal for this moment, for this version of myself that finally found the courage to live fully. Well, my dear, we're coming to the end of my story. A story I never imagined I would tell, much less live. A story about finding love and starting over at 68, when most people have already tucked away their romantic dreams in the drawer of memories. You know, many people ask how it's possible. How can a woman my age awaken interest in such a younger man? How can I not feel embarrassed, inadequate, or even ridiculous? The answer is both simple and complex at the same time. I learned that love, true love, has no age. It doesn't have an expiration date stamped on the body. It's not limited to smooth skin or firm bodies. Genuine love sees beyond wrinkles, beyond gray hair, beyond the numbers on an identity document. That doesn't mean it's easy. It's not. Each day brings its own challenges, its own insecurities. I still catch myself sometimes, looking in the mirror with critical eyes, noticing each new mark that time insists on leaving on my face, each inch that gravity pulls a little more downward. I still have moments of doubt when I wonder what Ethan really sees in me. What keeps him interested when he could have any 30-year-old with a firm body and a long future ahead? But then he walks into the room, looks at me in that way, as if I were the most precious thing in the world, and all the doubts dissipate. Because there's something in his eyes that doesn't lie, something that not even the best actor in the world could fake, a gleam of recognition, of genuine connection, of love that transcends the physical. You know what I love most about you? He told me one night as we sat on the porch watching the stars. Your authenticity. You've lived enough to not be afraid of being exactly who you are. There are no masks, no games, just Dorothy in all her wonderful complexity. And perhaps that's what people don't understand about relationships with a large age gap. It's not about the body, or at least not just about the body. It's about finding someone who resonates with your soul, who sees the world in a way that complements your own vision. Someone with whom conversation flows effortlessly, with whom silence is comfortable, with whom each shared moment seems enriched simply by mutual presence. Of course, there are those who don't believe, who insist there must be other reasons. Money, perhaps, or some kind of psychological fixation. People love to create theories about what they don't understand. In the beginning, this hurt me deeply. Today, I just smile and go my way. Others' approval is not something I seek anymore at this stage of life. Robert, my oldest son, still struggles to fully accept. At family gatherings, there's a subtle tension when Ethan is present. But even he has softened with time, especially after seeing how his own children, my grandchildren, adore Ethan and how he treats them with genuine affection. He makes you happy, doesn't he? Robert asked recently during a Sunday barbecue. Yes, son, I replied simply. Very happy. He nodded, his lips pressed in a thin line, but his eyes with a gleam of reluctant acceptance. Then I guess that's what matters, in the end. A small step, but significant. Christine went beyond acceptance. She became a fierce defender of our relationship, especially when other relatives or acquaintances make malicious comments. My mother is finally living for herself, after decades of living for others, I heard her say once to an aunt who was making insinuations about Ethan. And if you can't be happy for her happiness, perhaps the problem is yours, not hers. As for Ethan, he continues to surprise me every day with his maturity, his patience, his ability to see beyond appearances. In many aspects, he has an older soul than mine, a wisdom that transcends his 32 years. Perhaps that's why we connect so deeply, despite the 36 years that separate us on paper. Our life together has found its own rhythm, its own balance. We don't follow rules or expectations from anyone but ourselves. Some days are for adventures, short trips, art exhibitions, a new restaurant to try. Others are for quiet domestic intimacy, cooking together, reading side by side, falling asleep in each other's arms. Each moment is precious in its own way. And sex, yes, women of almost 70 still have and enjoy sex as much as society wants to relegate us to the category of asexual beings, continues to be a constant discovery. With Ethan, I learned to rediscover my body, not as an object of shame or inadequacy, but as an instrument of pleasure, a vehicle for connection, a source of joys I never imagined possible at my age. Your body carries your story, he told me once, kissing a C-section scar I've carried for more than 40 years. Each mark tells a chapter of the amazing woman you've become. Why would I want to erase or ignore that? It's moments like this that make me realize the depth of what we've found in each other. It's not just companionship or physical attraction or personality compatibility, although all of these are present. It's a mutual recognition at a soul level. A communion that transcends conventional barriers of age, gender, social expectations. I know that many women my age, and men too, live their final years in loneliness, convinced that the romantic and sensual part of life ended along with youth or with the departure of a spouse of decades. They accept this as natural, inevitable. They lock away their desires in locked drawers and content themselves with memories. And if that's fine for you, if that's your conscious choice, that's okay. But what I've learned in the last 8 months is that it doesn't have to be this way for all of us. That the heart doesn't age at the same rate as the body. That the capacity to love, to desire, to connect deeply with another human being remains intact as long as we allow it to be so. I'm not saying that everyone should look for a younger man. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is that all of us, regardless of age, deserve the chance to be happy, to feel again the butterflies in the stomach of a new love, to experience the joy of being desired, valued, loved for who we truly are. Charles was my companion for 40 years. We built a family together, shared joys and sorrows, faced life's challenges hand in hand. His place in my heart remains intact, unchangeable. Ethan doesn't replace him. He occupies a different, complementary space. It's a new chapter, not a rewrite of the book. In the beginning, I felt a strange guilt, as if I were betraying the memory of my late husband. Today I understand that the greater betrayal would be to deny myself the chance to fully live the years I have left, however many they may be. I don't know what the future holds for us. I don't know if we'll have decades, years, or just months together. Life offers no guarantees to anyone, regardless of age. What I know is that each shared moment is a treasure I keep in my heart, a blessing I never expected to receive at this stage of life. For you who are listening to me, who may be in a similar situation, widowed, divorced, or simply alone for years, I want to leave a simple message, but one that took me 68 years to fully understand. It's never too late. Never too late to love again. Never too late to rediscover your body. Never too late to break rules and expectations. Never too late to be happy on your own terms. Life is too short to live it through the lens of others' judgment. It's too precious to waste even a single day on self-limitations based on what women our age should or shouldn't do. So, my dear, if the heart still beats, if the soul still dreams, if the body still feels, allow yourself. Allow yourself to live, to love, to feel. Allow yourself to be surprised by life, even when, especially when everyone says your time has passed. Because the deepest truth I've learned from Ethan is that time is not a straight line that just advances inexorably. It's a winding river with unexpected eddies, surprising rapids, and occasionally, when we least expect it, a complete change of course that takes us to territories never before imagined. And it's there, in those unexplored waters, that we often find the greatest joys. It's never too late to let yourself be surprised by life. It's never too late to say yes to yourself. Never, ever is it too late to love. If you've also discovered that the heart has no age and experienced a love story that defied expectations, share your story in the comments below. Your experience could be the light that guides another woman to her own happiness. Remember, we're stronger when we share our journeys with each other.